This is Fowl Players Radio, your podcast for arts, entertainment, and pop culture. Welcome. My name is Michael Spedden, your host. Every episode features fun, fascinating stories about people in the performing arts, actors, authors, dancers, writers, musicians, athletes, you name it. Folks who are center stage, backstage, on camera, or behind the scenes. Sit back and listen. Let's have some fun. Fowl Players Radio is a proud production of the Fowl Players Group and the official podcast of the Fowl Players of Perryville.
Hello, this is John Piet,
Kevin Schmidt,
and Jerry Bozick.
And we're August, a little band from Virginia. You can hear our story, other stories from the legendary Baltimore, D.C. music scene, and much, much more with Michael Spedden on Fowl Players Radio. You can find it at www.fowlplayersradio.com, on YouTube, and wherever you find podcasts online. Keep rocking.
Hey, you guys, this is Gina Shock, drummer of the Go-Go's.
Snowman here.
Hey, Mary Jo Peel here.
Hi, this is Kathy Ladman.
Hi, this is Jay Nedry from the Road Ducks.
This is A.D. Adams, and you are tuned in to Fowl Players Radio with your host, Michael Spedden.
And welcome again, folks. Michael Spedden here, Fowl Players Radio. Tonight's guest is Rosearl Julian West, the author of Reflections, My Journey on Arunah. I really enjoyed this book. It's the story of her life from childhood to early adulthood, growing up in her family's home on Arunah Avenue in West Baltimore from the 1950s until the early 1970s, and how the historical, social, and political events of the time shaped her life experiences. She also shared some interesting stories of her time working at Baltimore radio stations WFBR and WBAL. The links to her book are in the show notes, reflectionsmyjourney.com and amazon.com/books, and then search for the title of the book, Reflections, My Journey on Arunah. If you are interested in professional comedic entertainment in your venue or fundraiser or other event, please consider a murder mystery from the Fowl Players of Perryville. For bookings and other information, please call 443-600-0446. Email us at foulplayersperryville@yahoo.com. And our website is www.foulplayersofperryville.com. Don't miss the Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, Baltimore's Pure Rock Worldwide, where we feature songs you forgot you liked, current and classic local rock, hard rock, and metal classics that never die. Tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can listen on your computer, download the app, and you can listen anywhere you go, 97underground.com. We at Fowl Players Radio are proud to support artists and encourage you to consider shopping small and supporting them as well. Links to their books, albums, tickets to their show, and other items can be found in the show notes of every episode. We thank you for tuning in and listening. Remember, you can help us greatly by clicking the like and subscribe buttons and giving us a fair review. Our main website is fowlplayersradio.com, and our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. We'll be right back with Rosearl Julian West right after these words.
Hi, this is Bud Becker.
Hi, everybody. Dwight Weems from Gaz the Fun Band.
Hi, folks. This is Jay David.
Hey, this is Brian Damage from Kicks and Rhino Bucket.
Hi, this is Kim of Kim's Crypt.
Hello, my name is Gunhild Carling.
Hi, this is Paul Castiglia, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio, the one-stop shop for all your pop culture needs.
And welcome back, folks, to another episode of Fowl Players Radio. Michael Spedden here. Tonight, our guest is Rosearl Julian West. She is the author of a book, Reflections, My Journey on Arunah, about her life growing up in Baltimore in the 50s and 60s. And it was an excellent, excellent read. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed this book, and I couldn't put it down. I was reading it on vacation, and you just have one great story after another, from the time you were just a little kid all the way through, your, early adulthood. And I just really enjoyed it. I highly recommend this book, folks. You're really going to enjoy it too, I'm sure. Looking in the beginning of the book, I mean, you really got some praise from some really, you really got some nice praise from some pretty notable people here. Mayor Schmoke, Ron Matz, Linda Foy, looked like Edward Dickman may have been the related to the doc or the pharmacist who was friends with your father.
Yes.
And so tell us, what brought this about here? What kind of inspired you to want to tell your memoirs, especially from this time of your life?
Well, some people ask why I decided to publish a memoir instead of a book of fiction. And to me, it was quite simple. I wanted to inform readers about my roots and my heritage, but I also wanted to explain some of the experiences I had growing up in West Baltimore during what I call gentle and turbulent times. And they were indeed gentle and turbulent. They were times which truly inspired me to pursue a career in broadcast journalism. Things that happened locally and nationally, historically speaking. And I wanted to do something that was a bit more innovative, to create a book that people outside of my family and friends would relate to. That's why I meshed my coming of age stories. These are stories about innocence, curiosity, grief, it's social awareness. I meshed them with the taste of local politics and culture and history and what was happening during that time in Baltimore and beyond. And what I really wanted to get across was, what was it like to be a starry-eyed young Black girl living in Baltimore during the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. So I wanted to pass that information along because nowadays it seems that people are reticent to share information about themselves, about their past, about their heritage. But I feel like this is something that should be shared because it paves the way for people to have a better understanding beyond their own situation of what people are doing, what they're like, what is their culture, what is their history, and they can better relate to what is going on in today's world.
I think you told the story again. I wasn't, born yet during a lot of these things here, but I think going through and giving an eyewitness account as to not only things that were in your very own home, but how the things going on in the world around you, affected you and affected other people in your life, and affected how things were in the city and everything. I think you really told it well, and it was a very interesting perspective, I thought, of history and what life was like at that time. And all the people in the book, your family members and everything. I really enjoyed reading about them as well. Talking about some of the things I found interesting. Your father came from the South, and it was a very difficult area to live in, being an African American man. Becoming a doctor, and I was just looking at what you had mentioned in there, how a white nurse was not allowed to help an African American person. I can't even imagine how your father was even able to get through medical school at that time, with all the restrictions and all these just awful laws that were in place.
Yes, and it not only my father, but all of his siblings managed to graduate, the first ones to graduate in our family, from a school in Indiana called DePaul University.
Yeah.
They all earned their degrees in various professions, including social work, education, and medicine.
Right. And everybody became professional, and I can see that. I guess it would have been your grandparents really saw to it that they stuck with it and really got these things accomplished. And I can tell that rubbed off on your father and the way he raised you and your siblings too.
Yes.
Making sure that all of you got something under your belt, found something that you were good at, and was able to pursue it.
Yes, education was of prime importance in our family.
Oh yeah.
based on the history of my aunts and my uncles having gone down that road and pursued their careers and in these different professions. My uncle Percy, he was a chemist, and he was when he was on campus, he didn't live in the dorm room. He lived in a separate room because of segregation. But he managed to go through the whole curriculum, earn his degree, and become this renowned chemist who had earned such fame from his discoveries and his inventions, like he was able to create artificial cortisone, which enabled a lot of patients to a cure for arthritis.
Wow.
And there were other drugs that he invented based on the use of soybeans.
Is that right? Who knew? I mean, just something like a soybean that you take for granted. I mean, you see them growing in the field, they're edible, but wow, really just taking that's just amazing, being able to figure that stuff out just from a simple soybean. I mean, that's quite so. And then, I mean, something that's obviously in need right now, especially as we get older. We all have our snap, crackle, and pop when we get out of bed in the morning, and coming up with that kind of cortisone to help ease that pain is just amazing. I mean, something that's definitely in need.
Yes.
Yep. Another thing that I saw that I found was interesting was that the house that your family bought on Arunah, you had bought from a family where a couple who you brought it from a lady whose husband was a doctor who had just passed away. Was this somebody that your father knew or had maybe mentored him, or did they know each other?
Absolutely not. He was a complete stranger. But this particular doctor was well known in West Baltimore. He actually practiced medicine in the basement of our house, the house on Arunah.
Yeah.
But he also practiced medicine in 2 other locations on the west side of the city. So he was well known. He was a graduate of the University of Maryland Medical School.
Oh.
And when my parents saw this house from the outside, they just loved it. It was a corner house, and it was unlike any other in the neighborhood. It had apparently it was developed by the architecture. The architect rather had lived there for a time. It was built in 1923, so today it's 100 years old. But it's a fabulous home inside. It was 15 rooms, all with hardwood floors, high ceilings, chandeliers, bay windows. It had 3 porches, one with an awning. It had a sun deck. It had a garage. So it was unlike any of the other homes that were in that neighborhood at the time. And I mean, when I was little, I just thought I was lived in a castle, in a mansion. It was so beautiful, and it was really tragic what happened to it over the years.
Right. And that tends to happen no matter where you go. I know so many people who grew up in their houses. They went back and visited the houses they grew up in, and they took one look at it. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Whether it just be neglect or something like that, or you move in and people just they just make it look awful because of bad taste or whatever. But that happens. But I mean, the way you described the house and some of the pictures that you showed inside, one thing I always liked about Baltimore houses was those stained glass windows that you had pictures of in there. That's really part of the folk appeal, I think, of anywhere you go in the city. And that's kind of right there with like the screen art and, a lot of the houses that had the marble steps in front, just kind of a trademark there,
Yes, indeed. And it was originally a brick home, but my father had it covered with something called formstone, which is like a masonry work with a stone. And this was a product that was created and produced in Baltimore. It's well known. A lot of homes in the city at that time had the formstone facing on the front. So that's another piece of history that people didn't know.
Yeah, oh, don't I know it? I'm growing up in Dundalk. My grandparents lived in it was a brick row home, and it was built in the early 50s. And this style, I'm willing to bet it was the same developer. If you drive up Moravia Road before you get to Moravia Road before you get to Sidonia, those houses. There's also like a couple of developments like that in Arbutus, Middle River. I think you know the houses I'm talking about. And I can remember as a kid, formstone salesmen coming around, not doing the whole house, but just doing like the area around the doorway. And I remember the day they were there putting it on. They had the molds and everything that went up, and that was something very, very popular. And that's really, again, a Baltimore trademark right there, I think, too.
It is, and one of my favorite photographs of me and my siblings is us sitting on the wall, on the formstone wall near the garage. And what struck me about that picture, it is in the book, is the formstone wall, and us dangling our legs across it. And then my youngest brother was the only one in that picture who had a short-sleeved shirt on and a bow tie.
Yeah.
And every time I see that, I laugh. Why did he have a bow tie? I don't remember why.
Right. Another story that you had mentioned was, and this is something that I can remember my grandmother and my great-grandmother telling me, Sunday for the girls, you had your dress on and you stayed clean and you were not outside running around. I can remember my great grandmother telling me stories about her really getting in trouble for leaving the front porch in her Sunday clothes back then. And that was really something your grandmother drove home to you, huh?
She sure did. There was no pants and no bicycle riding on Sunday, and you wore dresses. Girls wore dresses, not pants. And Sunday was the Lord's Day. So yeah, that was the thing then back then with her.
It sounds, and the other thing too that you had mentioned that I remember, even out in Dundalk, was they called them the street Arabs or the Arabbers, selling fruit, vegetables, and everything. They always had a pony with their cart. And years ago, I mean, they were all over the place. I mean, you don't see them out. I mean, I haven't seen them in Dundalk in 30 years. I mean, I don't live there anymore, but I stopped seeing them out there at least in the early 90s. But I think, there's a few still in the city.
Yes.
But those guys always had the best fruit, man. I tell you, you could get
They did.
The peaches.
I remember my father buying many a watermelon and a cantaloupe, and you could hear the horses coming down the street with the bells, and the Arabbers would yell out, "Watermelon, cantaloupe." Yeah, something you miss.
My neighborhood, it was strawberries, like that too. And and I'll tell you what, it was well worth getting it from them too. I mean, you could hear them coming. You run through, you get your change together and everything, and
just like the ice cream man.
Yeah. But sometimes
he always came around at dinner time when we were finishing up eating our dinner, and we have to keep lapping it up and get money and hurry up and run down the street to catch the truck.
Yep. Yeah, you hear the songs. I think you had mentioned "Turkey in the Straw" was the one that you hear that one, and then I had in our neighborhood they used to rotate. I guess they were on some sort of tape or something, or some kind of loop where you would get that one, and you get a whole bunch of other ones where you know the melody, but you don't know the name of the song, but you've heard it a million times.
Yes.
And sometimes they wouldn't stop right away. You end up having to chase them down the street for dear life, thinking that they're going to get away from you. And,
yes. Get out of breath.
Yep. And some of the other things that you had mentioned too, the pranks, the phone calls, calling up and asking people. We used to do that too. Back in those days, you could get away with it, because there was
no caller ID.
Right? Yeah, no caller ID. No, remember star 69.
Right.
You could people could hit that and catch you, and no caller ID, no star 69, no anything. And once you hung up, it was over with, and there was no way to really trace it. And
unless you got caught by your parents.
Yes. I know. That was the other
prank
thing.
The prank that we pulled well, my brother really pulled with the record player and
Mm-hmm.
the Indy 500 race car sounds going down the alley at 11 o'clock at night, and the lights flipping on in the alley with the houses. People
Mm-hmm.
apparently were going to sleep or had been asleep, and the lights were flicked on, every
Mm-hmm.
single one. And we would have gotten away from that if it hadn't been so loud.
Mm-hmm.
And my father had just finished his office hours downstairs and had come up in the kitchen, which was right above, the bedroom was right above the kitchen.
Yeah, I know.
He got caught on that one.
Mm-hmm. That is, I never would have thought to have done something like that, but that's a great prank right there. I mean, nobody's expecting that after dark.
No. But we, in the chapter called Midnight Madness, that was when we really pranked.
Mm-hmm.
That was the chapter. In that chapter, we kept my grandmother up all night long, making awful noises, gross noises, telling jokes, doing things from the Wizard of Oz, and my grandmother. Of course, she was elderly, but she shared a room across from my sister and I room.
Mm-hmm.
And we just felt like she wasn't coming in her room. She wasn't coming out of her room, get out of her bed and come to our room and tell us to stop. And she was not going to bring her strap. We just knew it. So we took advantage of that. And this went on like all summer long. And my parents never knew about it because my grandmother, she loved us so much, she never told them. She never told them what happened about her bad behavior.
Oh, yes. She was too busy feeding you waffles is what it was.
Yeah, the waffles. Yes.
Yep.
That story was funny. My parents had gone away to my father's college reunion at DePaul. And my oldest brother went with them. So that left my youngest brother and my sisters and I there. And our housekeeper, Mary, who was a devoted member of ours, she was just like a family member.
Sure, yeah.
So she asked us what we wanted for dinner. And we said, how about some waffles? So she said, okay, waffles. So that was Friday night dinner. So Saturday came along and she said, what do you want for dinner? Now this was very unusual because in our family, kids were never asked what they wanted for dinner. You were served what your mother served.
Oh, yeah.
But so this was like an honor. This was like an unusual event in our house. So she said, how about some nice fish? So my youngest sister, she said, Grandma, I don't want no fish. She said, fish. So I looked at her and said, did she really say pish? Because that sounded like she said something else, and I know she doesn't know that word. So my grandmother just kind of rolled her eyes and she said, okay, well, if you don't want fish, then what do you want? So we said, waffles. So this went on. Saturday night, we had, Saturday for lunch, we had waffles and sausage. And then Saturday night, she asked again, she said, what do you guys want for dinner? And she said, I know, I'll just fix some nice pot of spaghetti. And my sister said, no, Grandma, I don't want spaghetti. She said, that's not spaghetti. She said, that's spaghetti. And then she rolled her eyes and said, gosh, she's saying that word again. So she ended up, she said, Mary being a housekeeper, she said, fire up that waffle iron. So we had waffles on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. And when our parents came back, my mother asked if we had behaved ourselves. Of course we did. She said, well, what did you all eat while I was away? And I said, waffles. She said, and what else? I said, waffles. And she just couldn't believe that we ate waffles. So that ended our great waffle weekend. It was one we will always remember, waffles. And with King syrup.
Oh yeah. That's another trademark of Baltimore right there too.
Yeah, King syrup.
I think I had some similar weekends with my grandparents. With it was Squire's Pizza instead of waffles, but same kind of thing, the same kind of thing. And that was grandparents were great. You could go over there and get whatever you wanted. Their kitchen actually was a cafeteria as compared to, and as you had mentioned too, as we were growing up, um, you know, these are your options for dinner, what's on this plate and what's on this plate. And that was all there was. And very often you sat there until it was gone.
Yeah, or you hid your peas and your vegetables under the table, snacks under the table, or in a napkin.
Yep. Absolutely. 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 So as you were, just looking at some of the historical, things that had happened at the time, and just talking about how, you remember them. You had mentioned the Kennedy assassination. You had mentioned Martin Luther King's march and how you and your sisters wanted to go, but your father ended up taking your brothers. And tell us a little bit about those things too. What that was like, living through these things and just your memories of that time.
Yes, well, as far as the March on Washington was concerned, I was just proud to know that my father was going to this historic march to represent our family, and especially given our heritage. My father's grandparents were former slaves, and in Alabama, and he had shared a lot of stories about them. And that sort of like really drove my interest in the March on Washington for jobs and freedom to end racial segregation. So then also there was the case where my uncle Percy, who was the chemist,
right,
his home had been firebombed when he moved into a neighborhood outside of Chicago. He had been threatened before that, and he decided to stay there home. He was not going to move. They never did. FBI investigated, and they never found out who laid that bomb. And my cousins Faith and Percy Jr. were at home at the time when that bombing took place, and they went through a lot of mental trauma with that.
I can only imagine.
Yes. But anyway, knowing this history, I was proud that he was going. And then but when I learned that my brother, my oldest brother, was going, and that me and my younger sister, were not going, we were very upset.
Sure.
We felt that we were being discriminated against because we were girls.
Sure.
So we had to watch it live on television while he was at the march. And also we learned that our girl cousins, they were 10 years older than us, but our girl cousins were also going to the march. So that was one of the big historical events that really enlightened me. Like I said, I was in tears when I heard Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just I'm sorry. It was just such a historic, iconic speech. I mean, just to be watching it as it was happening must have really been something.
It was so profound and heart-wrenching to me. And my mother was watching it, and my other sister, and there was a man there at the time. He was doing carpentry work, woodworking, and he stopped what he was doing and he watched it as well. And actually, was a funny story that went along with that was my mother had a bet with him that he would not be finished the job before my father got back home. So he nailed a dollar bill to the wall. To the wall. It was a dollar bet. It was really kind of stupid bet.
Yeah.
Because it was like, if he finished the job, and my mother, and he kept the money, my father would be happy. Okay, but if he didn't finish the job, my mother would be $1 richer, and my father would be mad. So it was kind of a weird bet.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that was one of the, but he did finish the job. So my father brought back from the march, he brought me back a button that's it's a black hand and a white hand. It's the March on Washington commemorative button, and I still have it. It's sits in my button collection in my basement that I have framed. I have a huge political memorabilia collection dating back to 1926.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's, my late uncle collected buttons too. He had all kinds of them. I mean, when he passed away, I mean, he literally had boxes and boxes and boxes of them. And a lot of them were from different historical events, elections over the years, inaugurations, and then just anything else that happened around town. He had a whole bunch of remember in the 70s, they had that slogan, Baltimore is best.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one of those.
Yeah, I've got them too. I've got a number of them out there. And then also, like I had mentioned, inaugurations, and mayoral elections in Baltimore, as well as presidential elections, and so many of them he had. It was just really, you could sit there and look at them all day. It was just really an amazing collection he had.
Yeah. I mean, mine keeps growing and going out of space too.
Yeah.
But getting back to the march, what really struck me was the fact that there was like a missed opportunity there, because I really believe that in what Martin Luther King once said, that there is opportunity for everyone to be a part of the March on Washington. There is a part to play for every American in securing equal rights for all Americans.
Sure.
And that was written in one of his books. Some of the other historical events that took place, of course, was the 1968 riots in Baltimore.
Oh yeah.
My father was a good friend with the pharmacist who was Jewish. He owned this pharmacy store around the corner from our house, which we patronized. My sisters and brothers would go there to get snowballs. They had a snack bar there. We would get fountain cokes. We would get snacks, potato chips, whatever. We would ride our bikes over there. We were like frequent customers. We knew his sons by their names, and we would just go there all the time. And unfortunately, his store was hit by the rioters, the looters, and it was burned. And my siblings and I watched this go up in smoke from one of the porches at our house. But what was even more sad was the friendship between my father and the pharmacist. What happened was my father went to help him on the day before when we knew that riots were coming. And so he called the pharmacist, Dr. Arnold Dickman, and told him that he feared that his store was going to be targeted. So my father and him met up at the drugstore, and they started boxing up all the items that they could possibly get out of the store before it was hit. And my father boxed up some items and took them to our house for safekeeping, and hid them under the porch of our house. My mother was not delighted to see this because she was frightened that someone had seen him bring those items into our home.
Oh, sure.
And frankly speaking, I was scared myself. And all that evening, after his store was hit, we could smell smoke. We could feel heat.
Yep.
From the burning buildings. We could hear the rumbling of the National Guard tires, and we didn't sleep at all for a couple of nights in a row.
Oh, sure.
And it was really, it was hard to describe, because the way it all began was my dad got a phone call from my uncle out in Randallstown. This was on, it started in Baltimore on Saturday afternoon. My father got a call from my uncle in Randallstown on Friday night that rioting had begun in Washington, D.C. But based on the phone call, I only heard my father put down the phone and say, "There's going to be trouble." And I asked him, "What kind of trouble?" And he didn't answer. And he was stone-faced, and I'd never seen that look on his face before. He refused to talk. And I thought at first someone had died. I thought maybe a family member had passed away.
Sure.
But he went straight to the television and turned it on. And that's when he saw what was happening 43 miles, 45 miles away. And so, like I said, the rioting didn't start in Baltimore till the next day. And that's when he called his pharmacist friend. But yeah, his pharmacist friend lost everything that day. And my dad, he was one of the, I think it was close to 100 Black leaders who were called to the state office building by then Governor Agnew following the riots. And he lambasted all of them for not doing anything, and not doing enough, or not doing anything to stop it. And the truth was that my dad risked his life because he went to that store, and looters were in that store at the time. And he risked his life going there, and he went on live on television, and he spoke publicly to encourage people to be peaceful, to stop looting and stop rioting and stop the arsons. And yet here where the governor was, angrily debasing the people, the same people who had voted for him, who had elected him over another candidate, who ran on a policy of your home is your castle, protected, which was a dog whistle for racists.
Sure. I know, and you know, I mean, your father, I mean, just reading through the book about him, I mean, he, you know, from the very beginning all the way through, just really seemed like a stand-up guy and a real pillar of your community over there, where a lot of people really admired him. You know, he was the doctor. You know, he was called upon for a lot of different things, like the rally at Memorial Stadium. And he also ended up representing your district in the city council later on, and definitely didn't deserve that kind of scathing, you know, criticism, you know, from him, and from Agnew at the time. Just a real shame, about that. But you know, he just really seems, again, you know, from the way you described him and, you know, the things that he accomplished in life, just a real stand-up pillar of the community, you know.
He was. He served nearly 3 terms as Baltimore City Councilman, dating back to 1966, 67. And he passed away in 1978 suddenly. But he had a really strong voice, independent voice within City Council. He was the first physician to serve on the Baltimore City Council's Health Committee.
Sure.
He was sponsored legislation dealing with many of the health issues in Baltimore. There is a community center, a daycare center named after him in West Baltimore. He was just a prolific person, and he was. I get very tearful when I talk about him because he was a very influential. I rarely use the word politician because of the negativity that's associated with today.
Yeah,
But
I understand.
he was a prolific leader.
Yep.
And I was just so proud of him as a figure in Baltimore.
Oh, sure. I mean, again, you know, the way you described him and everything you said in the book, I mean, just a real stand-up person, a real pillar of, you know, somebody, and you know, I'm sure a lot of people really admired him because of all the things that he did, and you know, for not only his family but for the community, you know. definitely somebody that, Baltimore was better off having had, I would say, if that makes
He would
sense. Yeah.
he would go head to head with then Mayor Schaefer. They would be on opposite sides a lot, but
Mhm.
he was outspoken, but he was
Mhm.
independent and he spoke his voice. And he would his campaign slogan was he was the voice.
Mhm. That's
Mhm.
great. That's great. Well, oh,
Keep
good.
his strong voice speaking for you. That
Yep.
was his slogan.
Mm.
Yes.
That's a good slogan. That's a good slogan. I'm just trying to be going up against Mayor Schaefer. I tell you, he was a character,
Oh,
and
definitely.
that he's just a legend. Everything about him, all the time he spent as mayor. Um, we had some real characters in city government throughout the years. Him, Mimi DePietro, to name just a couple of them. It's just, uh, those were the days with those guys. I got to tell you, well, I don't have to tell you, you were here too, but
Mimi DePietro used to call me little girl.
oh
Even
yeah,
though I was at that time I was 16, 17 years old, he would call me
hmm
little girl.
yeah,
Like, okay. And Mayor Shaver would call me that too,
oh yeah, huh,
little girl.
yeah, little
Yes.
girl. Yeah, I can remember when, God, all the things that he did over the years. The one I remember the most, because I was in middle school at the time, he had a bet that they wouldn't get the aquarium done in time, and he lost. And he ended up having to go into the SEAL tank in that old bathing suit.
Yeah, with the straw hat.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes, that's an iconic photograph there.
it really
Yes.
is. It
For
really is. It really is. So I liked the part that you were talking about a lot of the toys that you had, because a lot of these were still out there when I was growing up too. Not only me but my siblings had them. But one really interesting thing, because I'm just a showbiz and pop culture geek, a Kathy doll that you had,
yes.
and you
Yes.
had mentioned that the voice of the actual doll was actually June Foray, and of course Rocky the Squirrel, the doll in the Twilight Zone, dozens and dozens of other cartoon characters, and the and now she's the actual voice of an actual doll. I never knew that about her, so I really I got a kick out of that fact that you put that in there.
Yeah, I did a little investigating on that when I
Uh-huh.
was looking into the Chatty Cathy doll,
Hmm.
the history of the Chatty Cathy doll. Um, She was a very unique doll in that, she was the first doll with the string you pulled
Yeah, the
that
string in
actually
the back.
talked.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the problem with that doll was the girls would pull that string and pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it. And
Hmm.
finally the string would broke. And if you go online to look for a Chatty Cathy doll now, it's hard to find one that has a working string, pull
Right.
string.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, you see those out there, collectors and all. Yeah, everybody has those, and they're selling them on eBay and stuff. And
Mhm.
the fact that one of those dolls would last this long without the string just dry rotting or disintegrating. um, but yeah,
Yeah.
they're there.
Plus, in the book, I point out that Chatty Cathy would say things that were not in sequence with what you were doing at the time. I mean, it was
Yes.
like pull your string and then say, "I fell down," and you're having a tea party, and she says, "I fell down," but then you pull her string again, and she may have a cookie.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of the grandmother in the Christmas Vacation movie sitting at the dinner table, is just saying all these off the wall things. Is Rusty still in the Navy? That kind of reminds me of that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Uh, but toys were
That
so
is
great
something.
back then.
They were.
From time to time, I look on YouTube and I see all these old toy commercials from back in those days. And I just remember of all the things that I had and all the things that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really great. I mean, one thing was that I can remember from back in those days was, did you ever have lawn darts?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they're finally banned. You can't get those anymore. The way they make them now is they actually rounded the end and they put bean bags in them, and you have to use them that way. And I'm just wondering, you never have people getting injured while they're playing cornhole. I think I'm almost willing to bet that some of these lawn dart accidents may have been on purpose. I don't know.
Could have been. Could have been. Well, my younger sister, she wanted, well, always on her Christmas list was the what do you call it? You jump up and down. Pogo stick.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, she was talking.
Pogo stick.
Yeah.
But my father said no, we were not getting a pogo stick. And she would say, why? He said, because I don't want you to bust your teeth out, or I don't want you to break your legs or break your ankle.
Right.
But
right.
she kept putting it on the list and putting it on the list, but she never got one.
Your father, again, you're being very aware of. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the toys that he probably said no to were based on people coming to him because they had them and they got hurt.
Yeah, probably. Most likely.
Probably had buddies downtown at the emergency room, talking about all the top toys from back in those days that were causing the most injuries.
The most injuries we had were from our bicycles.
Yes, I like that story too. You told me, and I had a similar one. Do you want to tell yours first?
The one about when I got on my brother's bike.
The one that was too big. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother dared me to ride his bicycle. He had an English racer, and it had handbrakes, and I was unaware of how handbrakes work on a bike. And plus, I was very petite, and he was much taller than I was. So this bet was kind of ridiculous to begin with. So he kept nagging me to get on this bike. So I said, okay, I'm getting on the bike. My bike, personal bike, I received a birthday present when I was 7 years old. And I rode that bike until I was 13. Meanwhile, my brothers and sisters had changed bikes a lot of times. So he dared me to get on this bike. And I rode it up the street. And then I turned the corner on Arunah. And that was fine. But I was bent over, could barely reach the pedals. And then I went around the corner and the bike began to pick up speed, and it had to go down this slope because there was an alleyway. So my plan was to go around the alley entrance and go back up on the sidewalk. Well, that didn't happen. In essence, what happened was the bike kept picking up speed, and I kept pedaling instead of putting the handbrakes. And I panicked. So I was on Benslow Street, which is a busy street.
Yep.
And ended up on Edmondson Avenue intersection, and cars were racing by in both directions. They were honking their horns and all. And I feared for my life. I thought I was going to die that day. I was sweating profusely. And I ended up within, it wasn't even 50 feet, maybe 25 feet of hitting this fire engine that was parked outside the firehouse. This man came out of nowhere and pulled up the back of the bike off the ground and stopped it on a dime. And he was my guardian angel that day. And he said to me, get off the bike. And I said, no problem. And he said, this is not your bike, is it? And I said, no, it's my brother's bike. And he said, if I were you, I would walk that bike home. Which I did. I had never seen that man before. He was the angel. He saved my life that day. I never saw him again. But I thank God that I'm still alive. But I walked around to the corner and looked, and there my brother and sister were standing there. So I did get back on the bike, and I rode it up to the garage and put the kickstand down, and acted like nothing ever happened.
Uh, I had a very similar thing happen to me. There were, some older kid in the neighborhood had a 10-speed, and it was too tall for me. And I'd gotten on it, and I was just, rocking back and forth on it. Then I lost control as I was riding it, and I was heading right for this, elderly woman, and on my bike, you would pedal backwards, and that was your brake.
Okay.
On this one that had hand brakes, and I couldn't reach it. And I tried to pedal backwards, but it just, on 10 speeds, it didn't stop. You would keep going backwards like that. It wouldn't push the bike backwards, and I couldn't stop, and I ran this lady over. And I flew over the handlebars and landed in the bushes. And needless to say, she wasn't very happy with me, and neither was my father. And because I had to go home, and it's like nowadays, she told me, she was, "Who are you?" And she goes, "I know who you are, and I know who your parents are. You go home and get your father, and you bring him back here right now." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And nowadays, kids would just run away,
Yeah.
But that, I did. I went home and I got my father. We went over there, and it was they call it nowadays a teachable moment. I definitely there was some discipline involved. Definitely, I was punished for a couple of days and told not to let people talk me into doing dumb things. But yeah, but I saw you talking about that, being on a bike that was too big, and I was like, oh my God, I remember that.
Yes.
Yep. This was just such. I really, as I had mentioned before, this is just a really well done book. Just such a nice, just such a great story that you told. Living through all these different things, throughout history. From the time you were a child up into your, young adulthood. You didn't mention in your book much of, hardly anything about, except that you were on the radio in the back of the book, but you have been on, a good number of stations around the Baltimore area over the years when you spent your career in radio. Is there anything you'd like to share about those years with us before we wrap up?
Well, one of the funny things I like to share is how I got into radio. I was a summer intern at WFBR Radio,
Oh
which was the
yeah.
home of Charlie Ekman, the sports caster Charlie Ekman, and the shock jock at the time was Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker.
Yes. So that summer, as an intern, I was what they call a gopher. I would go for this, go for that, anything that anybody wanted. I would go to the store to get. I would file things away. I would empty the trash cans, get people coffee, whatever. But my real interest was getting into the newsroom. So Tom Marr, who was my mentor at the time.
Oh, sure.
He went to our boss, Harry Schreiber, and asked for a pay raise. And we knew he was going to ask for one. We were sitting around the newsroom. He says, "I'm going there right now and ask for a pay raise." And we said, "Oh, good luck with that." So he went in there, and it was about time for him to leave, because he usually left the station around right after the conference call program, which I moderated. And he goes in Harry Schreiber's office. He's in there maybe every 20 minutes. He comes back in with this disgusted look on his face. So we said, "Well, did you get the raise?" And he goes, "No, I didn't." And I said, "Oh, that's terrible." So he picks up the phone and he calls out to the switchboard. And the woman who was operating the switchboard at the time was not the regular switchboard operator. She was sitting in for her. So he calls out there and he says, "Can you page Jack Benny to the newsroom?" So Jack Benny, I don't know if you know this, but Jack Benny was a comedian.
Oh, I love
on
him.
the television, and he was known as a miser.
Yes,
He did not spend any money. So he asked the woman to page Jack Benny to the newsroom.
Yes.
So the woman, the switchboard operator, she didn't know who Jack Benny was,
Oh,
and she didn't know who Tom Marr was. So she paged Jack Benny to the newsroom. So it just so happened that Harry Schreiber, who was the head of the station, had left the building for lunch, but his secretary was there. She came storming out of her office and she was screaming, "Who paged Jack Benny to the newsroom? This is not funny." Meanwhile, we were in the newsroom just rolling, laughing, because it was like the funniest thing we had ever heard.
Oh yeah.
Funny. But then Tom Marr left the building before the secretary came out of her office. He made his mad escape. But I'm sure Harry Schreiber heard about that before he left the building, before he came back from lunch. When he came back from lunch.
Oh, I'm sure he
did.
did.
Another funny story is this is when I worked at WBAL Radio. It was a heat wave, and I was called out to do a story as a street reporter about how people were managing working outside in the heat. So I talked to the local mailman up in Roland Park.
Oh, sure,
and
yeah.
he said, "Oh, I got plenty of water in my truck, and I've got a fan, and this and that." And then I interviewed a woman who was jogging, and she said the same thing. "I try to stay cool by drinking water. So then I went to the golf course at Forest Park, and I pulled up the news van and got out, and I met this golfer who was in a golf cart. And I'd never been on a golf course before. So while I was talking to him, I said, "How are you managing in the heat? How's your golf game going? Is it better? Is it worse?" So he said, "Actually, I think it's better." So I'm listening to him, and my tape recorder's going on. Then all of a sudden, I hear this hissing sound. I said, "What is that hissing sound?" But I didn't say it out loud. So I'm listening to the man. He's describing the heat, how the heat-related weather and all. And then I heard this hissing sound again. So he says, "Well, it was nice talking with you." He says, "I really got to go. I got to go finish my rounds on the course." I said, "Okay, it was nice meeting you." So I turn around and I say, "What is that hissing sound?" And then the hissing sound came on again, and I found out what it was.
What was that?
It was it was water that came up out of the ground. The sprinkler system. I was standing on top of it, and the water came straight up my dress and ruined my sandals.
Oh, jeez.
But the good thing was, it was so hot that my clothes dried almost instantly.
Oh yeah, that'll do it in that weather.
So I went back to the news car, went home, which was not too far from there, changed my clothes, went back to work, and one of my coworkers said, "Hey, that wasn't what you were wearing earlier today." He said, "What happened?" And all I said was, "Water, lots of water."
That's great. That's great. You know, there was a lot of history in radio in Baltimore. A lot of the great personalities and people that you would just, yourself, and then you just mentioned Tom Marr, Harry Schreiber, Charlie Ekman, Johnny Walker, so many more out there too. And I'd love to, chat another time when you're ready, to elaborate on, those years some more. I'm sure you saw quite a bit, just with the stations that you worked on and everything. I would be, and I'm sure my listeners would absolutely love that as well. So I appreciate you again joining us tonight. The book is Reflections: My Journey on Arunah, Rosearl Julian West. Now, where can we get this book?
The book is available on Amazon.com/books. You can go online and order that. You can also preview my book by going to reflectionsmyjourney.com.
Okay, great. And is it available in stores around Baltimore too?
Oh, not yet, but I'm working on that, and I'm also working on getting it in the form of an ebook.
Oh, hey, that's a popular thing now too. And an ebook, you mean like a
Kindle book,
like a Kindle, like you would read it like a PDF, not a audio book,
right?
Okay, because they have those. Obviously, they have those as well too. So, Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. You heard, again, you can get the book Reflections. The links to get Reflections, My Journey on Arunah, will be in the show notes, everybody. And I would like to thank you for joining us tonight. It was a great book, a great read. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed having you come on to tell your stories.
Thank you so much. And I would like to thank all of my editors for their hard work in making my dream come true of becoming a published author. I'd like to thank Christine McKee, and I'd like to thank Jackie Oldham again for making my dream come true.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you heard it here, folks. Please go out and buy this book. It's well worth the read. And we will see you all next time. This is Michael Spedden signing off on Fowl Players Radio.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Hello, listeners. We at Fowl Players Radio thank you for all of your support over the past 10 seasons and nearly 300 episodes. We would like to encourage you to keep listening and spread the word. Audio versions of all episodes can be found on our main website, fowlplayersradio.com, as well as on many of the other platforms you can see here. You can find all of our Season 9 and 10 episodes, as well as some best-of episodes and shorts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get alerts when new episodes are released. No matter what platform you choose to listen, you can help us greatly by hitting the subscribe button and giving us an honest review. You can also help us by supporting us at patreon.com/fowlplayersradio or at buymeacoffee.com/fowlplayerw. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to be your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for new episode announcements and news and updates on all of our guests. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. And thank you again for listening to Fowl Players Radio tonight. Our guest was Rosearl Julian West, the author of Reflections, My Journey on Arunah. Links to her book can be found in the show notes of this episode. If you're interested in professional comedic entertainment for your venue, fundraiser, or other event, please consider a murder mystery from the Fowl Players of Perryville. For bookings and other information, please call 443-600-0446, email fowlplayersperryville@yahoo.com, and our website is www.fowlplayersofperryville.com. Don't miss the Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, Baltimore's pure rock worldwide. We feature songs that you forgot you liked, current and classic local rock, hard rock, and metal classics that never die. Tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern and listen on your computer or download the app so you can listen everywhere you go. 97underground.com. We at Fowl Players Radio are proud to support the artists that we have on our show, and we encourage you to consider shopping small and supporting them as well. Links to their books, albums, tickets to their shows, and other items can be found in the show notes of every episode. We thank you again for tuning in and listening. Remember, you can help us greatly by clicking the like and subscribe buttons and giving us a fair review. Our main website is fowlplayersradio.com, and our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. So we will see you all next time, and we hope you enjoyed this show. This is Michael Spedden signing off.